Hey YouTubers, this is a follow-up video to my previous video on how to install rear speakers in the access cab of a Toyota Tacoma SR. If you recall my previous video, I talked about how my stereo has a fade feature, but when you fade it all the way to the rear, there was no sound because there's no rear speakers in the back door of the SR cab Tacoma. So in my previous video, I talked about how to find the wire harness, which is behind this side panel. There's a plug back there, plugs into the wires here. Unfortunately, Toyota did not run, they stopped here and they didn't run wires into the back door. So I showed you in the first video how to locate the speaker wires back here, which ones they are and how to tap into them. And I routed my speaker wire through and basically had to wire the door myself for speakers. But at that time I didn't have my rear speakers and didn't know exactly what I was going to do. So since then, what I did is I purchased a set of 6-inch Infinity speakers from Crutchfield, and I installed those into the hole in the doors where the speakers would belong and wired them up. And then the trick here is the door panel. So what Toyota did with the SR door panel, if you remember from my previous video, this area right here has a plastic plate covering it, which is really unfortunately a shame because the door has, as you can see, the mesh for the speaker is part of the door panel already, and this is probably the same door panel they would use on a non-SR vehicle that had rear speakers, but they decided to slap that extra plate to cover this when you don't have speakers. And the problem with that is the plate has 6 kind of plastic studs or rivets, if you will, and they drill through the panel to put that plate on there, to weld or plastic weld that plate on there. So to expose the mesh, you have to drill out those plastic studs or rivets, and I recommend you drill them out with the smallest drill bit that you can find, because it does leave these big nasty holes in the panel. So to cover those holes, what I did was I went to Amazon and I found these automotive plastic plugs, trim plugs, and these are probably about 1 centimeter across. And I basically put them in there, but I had to glue them in there because these holes that are left behind when you drill out those plastic studs, the holes are pretty big. So anyways, I pushed these pins in there, but I had to put a little glue, which is why I recommend, if you drill yours out, use the smallest possible drill bit that you can get away with to drill out those studs. But what you'll see, I was able to buy a bag of, like, I don't know, 100 of these things for like 10 bucks or something like that. They were cheap on Amazon. Drilled out the 6 holes, carefully pull the plastic panel off and glue in these little plastic studs, and you'll see I've got Infinity speakers back there now where factory speakers would have been, and the door panel is back installed on the door. The other thing I would recommend you do when you pull these panels off, the plastic clips that hold your door panels, sometimes those things can get jacked up and break. So you may want to buy, you know, 6 extra ones before you take on this project. Go to the Toyota dealership and get some extra clips that hold this door panel on. They're red in color and they don't all come off cleanly. But anyways, door panel is back on, and this is what it looks like with the speaker installed using these little plastic plugs. All right, hopefully that helps. And now I have sound to the rear of the cab when I fade back to rear. So there you go.